Being with you all today. I want to start off a little bit differently before I get into some background information and share some big news about three people that have endorsed me for my run for County Commissioner. I have received endorsement of Jeff Turner, Russ Meyer, and Lynn Nichols. I share these three outstanding individuals with you not because they are leaders in our community, not because they have recognizable names that obviously a lot of people can associate with. I share these great names with you because these are leaders that are building companies or have built companies in this community that are still building planes in our community and still adding jobs, and that's the kind of leadership we need today. We need people that were going to fight for jobs for Wichitans, and that's why those three outstanding individuals have endorsed my run for County Commissioner. I do want to endorse one. I do want to acknowledge one special person here today because she makes me look good. My wife, it'll be 32 years later this year. When we talk about those things that make us the happiest and the things that make us the most proud, I will get into a little bit of background about my efforts in helping our community, but what truly makes my wife and I the most proud is we're blessed with such a great family. We have three children, one daughter who is a para-educator out at Mays, and we have twin boys who have graduated at Wichita State. One is an aerospace engineer working for an IR in this community. The other is a high school science teacher that's getting married later this year, and we're thrilled to death that we have been blessed with great kids that understand what hard work and education and dedication will do for your lives. We have a granddaughter. I share with people all the time we have the smartest granddaughter in the world. She's 2.5 years old and speaks in full sentences, so we feel truly blessed. A little bit of background I want to share with you. I've been in this community for a long time, born and raised here. I served 12 years on the Mays School Board, and during that time on the Mays School Board, proud to say that we grew that district from about 3,000 students to 6,000 students. And even with that unbelievable growth, we were able to put money in the classrooms, unprecedented money in the classrooms, and many years lower mill levy. It's one of the most competitive districts in terms of the mill levy as you'll find in any of the suburban districts, and it had a great reputation. Part of that reputation is probably what helped West Wichita grow, and certainly that's what helped get me into the city council position. During that tenure, I met City Council Member Bob Martins. Love him to death. He encouraged me to run for this position. Bob, in our first meeting, I shared, Bob, I'd like to invite you out to Mays. We have a special dedication. We'd like to have you come out, maybe say a few words. And Bob looked at me and goes, Jeff, he goes, I'd love to. He goes, my schedule's kind of packed. He goes, but I've got a lot of activities in my district that I need to worry about right now. And I said, Bob, you need to understand that about 91% of the students that go to Mays schools live in West Wichita. He said, what time was I supposed to be there? So, I love his support and his dedication to the community. Really got me started in my city politics. I've been on the city council for 5 years and served as vice mayor. One of the things that I'm very proud of is some of the changes that we've made in those 5 years. We have been able to live within our budget in the worst of economic times by making some changes in the way we do business. We haven't had to draw from our reserves, and we haven't had to raise the mill levy in tough economic times to meet our budget demands. One of the things that I was offered when I first got into office is I toured City Hall. In the basement of City Hall, and I've been in the graphics business for about 30 years. Forgot to mention that I'm a business owner. I helped build a small company, worked there about 23 years. When I started, we had about 3 or 4 employees. When I left there, we had roughly 75 employees, so pretty proud of building a small business into something special right here in Wichita. Ultimately, it ended up moving, got sold to Texas after I left the company. But I toured the basement of City Hall, and we had a printing operation. We had antiquated equipment. My guess is the people probably weren't trained the way the industry needed to train them. And I shared with my colleagues, that is not the most efficient way to do things. Government doesn't need to be doing all things, and convince them that we can farm out that operation, privatize it, send it to local printers, and to date we've saved about $500,000. That's the kinds of things that help us meet our budgetary demands. We, a couple of years ago, ended up privatizing all of our mowing of our green spaces. The city has a lot of green spaces, right-of-ways, parks, and there was a lot of controversy. In fact, some people filled up City Hall complaining to us not to eliminate those jobs. We ended up privatizing that operation, stayed on the same mowing schedule, and we saved $1 million annually by letting the private community deliver those services instead of government deliver those services. Folks, those are the kinds of things that we need to do to make sure that we can streamline government. We have condensed some of our departments at City Hall. Today, we have fewer employees at City Hall than we had 5 years ago when I first got elected. And we're still delivering services, I'll argue in some cases, even better. Need to wrap up. I was hoping I'd have part of Carl's time. The key to, as I said, streamlining government is making tough choices, sometimes really hard choices where some people have fought against because their particular government job was one that was getting eliminated. But at the end of the day, I think they'll be better served, we'll all be better served by streamlining government, privatizing some of those operations, and I'm proud of the 17 years I've spent in various forms of government, the record that I have. Hopefully we'll get into some more of this dialogue, and you too will come to understand why those three tremendous individuals endorsed me in this last week, and I hope that many of you will too. Thank you.
I also have some endorsement announcements. It's been actually a remarkable 24 hours for the Peter John for County Commissioner campaign. Yesterday I was truly privileged and honored to receive the endorsement of former Congressman Todd Tier. And I am going to be doing what I can to make sure that the voters not only know about this endorsement, but also found out a little later, and I'm very proud as a pro-life adoptive parent that I received the endorsement of Kansans for Life. Let me begin by talking a little bit about myself and my background. I'm married a little over 21 years. We've got 2 kids. Back in the 1960s, I was involved with the Boy Scouts, became an Eagle Scout, and last summer I took my son out to the Cub Scout camp, and boy, scouting's changed a little bit in 50 years in some ways, and it's a challenge. Now, I want to point out some differences. I graduated from Ohio University with dual majors in economics and government. I've got a master's degree in economics. I served as a budget analyst in the state of California from 1973 to 1975. I was jokingly like to say it was 2 weeks under Ronald Reagan and 2 weeks under Jerry Brown. I share that because when I left California, Jerry Brown was governor, and sort of like the Hotel California, look at them today. Jerry Brown's still governor, and what a mess they're in. But when I came to Wichita, shortly after I came here, I ended up going to work for a company, NCR, and was involved as a quality engineer. Not only traveled all over this country, but I traveled around the world. And so I have international business experience that I think is very valuable in the current position I have. For 16 years, from 1993 till I became a commissioner, I was the executive director for the Kansas Taxpayers Network, fought against raising taxes on a variety of locations, helped keep Sedgwick County under the state statutory property tax lid back in 1997, worked with a number of legislators, including leaders like then House Speaker Tim Schallenberger, Susan Wagle, Phil Klein, and we managed to get legislation passed, which was signed into law that lowered the statewide mill levy from 36.5 down to 21.5 mills. We also managed to eliminate one of the big anti-business personal property taxes in the state. We got an exemption in place that's been gradually increased, and in 2006 went much broader in terms of impacting and reducing business taxes going forward for business personal property acquired after July 1st, 2000, I believe it was 2006 or 2007. I've also served on a variety of boards. I'll mention a couple here. I was Wichita CPO, that was the predecessor to the DAB boards. I served on 2 of those. I was 8 years, I was on the Wichita Library Board, where I was chaired the Finance Committee and also was Secretary and Treasurer of the board. One of my proud accomplishments that I have to share was I am Precinct Committeeman for Precinct 522, which is out in western Sedgwick County. And in 2006, despite the fact that the Republican candidate for governor lost to then Governor Sebelius rather badly statewide, he carried my precinct with over 60% of the vote. So I take credit for that. Now I'm going to talk just a second, just for a little bit about my role since I've had the privilege of being on the county commission. And the county mill levy is lower today than it was when I took office, unlike my city mill levy, which has grown, albeit fractionally. And that's one of the reasons I voted against our budget last year, was because it had a fractional increase. But my city property taxes went up 4/10 of a mil since 2007. And I share that because it's easy when you get into government for people to say, well, we don't actually set the mill levy, we set a budget, and then the mill levy gets adjusted. Well, I said, hey, I don't want the mill levy going up. And I'm continuing to fight for that. I would point out the fact that Sedgwick County credit rating is not only higher than all the other local units in this county, but according to all 3 rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, it is higher than the federal government's. Now, one of the accomplishments we've done since I've been on the commission, and I'm absolutely delighted, you can go on the Sedgwick County website and get our county checkbook. It's completely open. If you want detailed financial information about anything and everything, it is out there. And the state has been working towards doing this. I would hope that the other governmental bodies in Kansas would follow Sedgwick County in doing so. Now, one of the big challenges we've had has been jail overcrowding. And shortly after I became a commissioner, in October 2009, that was our worst month. We had days where we had over 1,750 people who were in the Sedgwick County Jail. And as of today, because of programs like pretrial services and eliminating the free rider problem that had existed, population in the Sedgwick County Jail is 1,464 as of this morning. Now, we've done this at a time of unprecedented economic difficulties and challenges. The economy is struggling. We all know that. The employment news that came out this morning was once again bad. Here in Sedgwick County, the challenge we've had is taxable assessed value has not grown. In fact, a little bit of good news you might have enjoyed is that 70% of the homes in Sedgwick County actually had a slight reduction. Now, I'm going to point out a couple of points where I'm working for and continue to fight, but I want to also state I have not taken any pay raises, will not take any pay raises unless I campaign on it, and I'm not campaigning on taking any pay raises. No property tax hike increases without voter approval. I've been working for that. Works with sales taxes, why not for other taxes? We need to catch up with our neighboring states. We need to create a positive government environment with lowers the risk, creates more certainty and a stronger rule of law. Trying to work on asset sales and see where we can generate more revenue through energy option. I oppose wasteful federal grants, including the HUD EPA sustainability grants. I support Representative Pompeo's effort to give local units the option to return grants and have it used to lower the deficit. I opposed TIF subsidy districts, And I was also a petitioner against the Ambassador Hotel. And I have one area of frustration I was going to share, but maybe I'll save that for my closing remarks or the question period. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm Pastor Terry Fox, and we host the Answering the Call radio show on Sunday nights. And Jeff, I wanted you to answer this, and then Carl, you might respond. There are a lot of us here that were very disappointed, Jeff, in your vote for the Agenda 21. We let that be known. A lot of people let you guys know that we were concerned about Agenda 21. We were disappointed that many of the commissioners, as well as City Council, blew off all the people who took time to go down there and speak. My question, Jeff, would you rescind your vote on Agenda 21? In the future, will you listen to people when they come with legitimate concerns? We'd appreciate you responding to that, and also, Carl, your response to that also.
Reverend, let me start off by saying I think I always listen to people. I think we had all of 7 people come down and address the council that day that we took up that issue for a vote. And I took notes from all 7 of them. When we took up that issue for a vote at our Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting that is published far in advance, and my opponent even said on that same committee briefly, there was not a single person in opposition to voice their concerns on that. Number one, I don't consider it Agenda 21. I consider it a planning grant, just like many of the other communities in this state have utilized, including the Flint Hills, Kansas City area, and our regional economic area partners that I've been a part of have fought hard so that we can do a number of things with that planning grant. And that's why you see locally elected officials from all over this region get on board and share their concern for that planning grant. That's why the mayor of Mount Hope has also got on board with wanting that planning grant. In western Sedgwick County, we have an issue out there of stormwater flooding. And we're not going to address the issue of flooding if we just do it in a very parochial way. We've got to do it in a much broader way out there before we're going to fix it, because all of that water doesn't care about boundary lines where cities and counties divide. And one of the ways that we can address those issues is by utilizing this planning grant. It's going to be done by local citizens. We're going to listen to local voices, and we're going to come up with a local solution to solve that problem. And this planning grant will allow us to do that.
Thank you for the question, because I voted on this issue 3 times. Once when then Commissioner Parks and myself were joined by Commissioner Welsheimer, we voted it down 3-2, but it came back about a year later and the commission had changed, and I voted against it a second time. Commissioner Ranzaw and myself voted against it, and we've done so twice. I want to commend Commissioner Ranzaw, who has really researched this issue tremendously and put together a tremendous little document that I urge you to see if you want more information on this subject. We have at the moment a tremendous number of planning organizations, and Councilman Longwell is correct that I was on LAMPO very briefly. However, this issue did not come up during the time I was on there. And I would hasten to add that we already have a Metropolitan Area Planning Department. The city and county pay for this. We have a Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization that's on top of this, which covers a little bit broader area because it stretches into including Andover and I believe Mulvane, so it goes out of county a little bit. We also have a Quad Counties group that communicates on issues too, and my concern in part on this is the fact that we've already got overlapping layers of bureaucracy. It's very confusing for the public. It's not clear where the lines of responsibility begin. And we do have some water and drainage issues out in West Wichita. We have a group in the Public Works Department that's working those issues all the time. In fact, we've done work, the Sedgwick County crew has done work inside the city of Wichita out by the northwest branch of the Y. with the Dry Creek problem. And actually, one of the problems we've got is there are 3 dry creeks here in Sedgwick County, but the one that's here closest to the northwest branch of the Y. And drainage is always going to be an ongoing issue and challenge. But bringing the Obama regime's planning bureaucracy into Sedgwick County is not the solution to any local government problem in this community.
What I'd like you to comment on is your views in regard to the utilization of incentives that, in your opinion, if you view it this way, can make a difference in terms of promoting the expansion of businesses and jobs growth in the community, which is essential to the long-term success of this community.
Wes, there's so many different aspects to that question, because as a county commissioner, we have veto power. If a municipality approves a TIF district, for instance, we have like 30 days, and the school districts in the area do the same, to be able to approve or reject, say, that TIF district. But when it comes to the whole panoply of development tools, such as CIDs, community improvement districts, TDDs, transportation development districts, STAR bonds, there's a whole gamut of tools out there that the county has no say on, and that strictly gets powers that are reserved to the municipalities. I would share this tax increment financing TIF story because we've had 2 come up since I've been on the commission. First one was Plainview, a grocery store down there, excuse me. And the city council approved it. We rejected it 5-0 at the county commission. And the developer denounced the county commission and walked away from the project. But about 6 months later, another developer came up, built a bigger facility, and that store is in place and operating today without the tax increment financing subsidy. So the real challenge is what is the optimal amount of subsidy to provide, and who makes the decisions? I am much more comfortable with a market-driven approach as opposed to a top-down, and whether we're talking about a federal energy program that gives us cylinders or a local program that gives us the Ambassador Hotel. I want this community to grow and prosper, but I want equal opportunity for each and every one of you out there.
Wes, let me see if I can answer that a little more directly. At the end of the day, we've got to compete. We've got to compete for jobs. We've got to compete for businesses. We have to attract new companies to move or grow in Wichita. What I've been able to do since I've been on the city council is develop an economic development policy that guarantees a return on investment, guarantees that we're going to safeguard the taxpayers' investment in growing our job base. Because if you go right down the highway 2 hours to Oklahoma City, they're spending millions of dollars to do the same thing in cash incentives. Texas, since the early 90s, have spent hundreds of $millions in cash incentives, and we've got to be in the game to compete too. But the way we do that is we guarantee a minimum return on investment. We have to have stipulations in there for personal guarantees and clawback provisions that if they don't perform, the citizens get their money back. Simple as that. Now, my opponent has voted in the past for some incentives to move companies from South Wichita to Colwich, and he voted for a variety of other incentives without the same clear definition of the policies that we have in place now. I want to make sure the county has those policies in place so that we can guarantee investment and growth and compete for jobs in our community. Jobs, just like I said before, that the Jeff Turners and Russ Myers are continuing to fight for and grow in our community, and they've had to use those incentives in our community in the past, but we make sure that that return on investment comes back to our community.
Thank you. Carl Koster, Cheney City Council. I'd like to address this to Commissioner Peter John. As you know, the ambulance in far western Sedgwick County has been moved from Andale Road to Goddard, which makes a 25-minute response time to western Sedgwick County, far western corner. What would you do to improve that?
Well, we're playing zone defense when it comes to coverage, because I've taken a look at where the stations are that have responded to calls in the western part of the county. And you're absolutely right that the newest station, although not to be the new, we'll have a newer one out here. Actually, there's one newer that's on East Central that's newer than the one in Goddard. But the real challenge is getting people medical treatment. And I'm delighted that we're in a situation where with St. Teresa's opening up out at 151st Street, getting people into getting emergency medical treatment and don't have to go east of the Big River anymore in downtown Wichita to be able to get that treatment. But the real challenge we've got is we've got to grow the economy, and we do it based on the volume of calls that we have. And it's interesting to note that our station down in Hayesville is answering about a third of the calls that come in from the western part of the county, Morton Township in general, and you're interested in Chi in particular, but Morton's your township, and I think this would cover also for Erie and Grand River, your other townships that are north and south of you. What we're trying to do is provide the fastest, most effective coverage that we have, considering the fact that the volume of calls is growing 4 to 5% a year, and it's going to cost us close to $1 million to put in and get a crew, get them trained, get them equipment, and put them in place. And the managers, we've been talking about whether that's going to happen or not, and I'll be interested to see what he recommends, because at the moment we've got a decline in revenue. Property taxes aren't growing the way they used to, even with the mill levy being flat, let alone being reduced. And if the economy is flat, it's going to be very hard to produce additional services unless there's more growth. And so we're going to try and do the best we can for all parts of the county, but the vehicles are often out of their stations depending upon where they think the next call is going to come in. And if you hadn't had the opportunity to visit our facility where they set that up, I urge you to do so. And I can arrange it for you, Carl.
I've been there.
My opponent mentioned the federal government earlier. One of the things that Sedgwick County and the federal government have in common is today both of them spend more than they take in. If we can streamline government and improve some of the efficiencies, I think we can find the resources so that we don't have a 25-minute wait time. I think we can look at more merging. Right now, to date, I would love to see the county do more privatizing of some of those services that I mentioned earlier. Right now, the county has their own printing operation, and they spend tens of thousands of dollars on their printing operation. If we can streamline some of those services and deliver them more efficiently and focus on those priorities that mean the most to our citizens, I think we can find the dollars so that they're not waiting 25 minutes for an ambulance.
Thank you. Bob Weeks. I'm interested in learning more about the candidate's stance on eminent domain, specifically the taking of private property for the purposes of economic development, because on Mr. Longwell's card, he talks about protecting private property rights. But last year, Susan Estes of Americans for Prosperity and I appeared at a city council meeting asking that the city remove their support in their legislative agenda for the use of eminent domain for economic development. But that measure passed the city council unanimously. So I'm just interested in learning more about the eminent domain stance of both candidates.
Thank you for bringing up an issue that was a major point that I tried to emphasize, because about 4.5 to 5 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court, in an act of judicial intemperance by a 5-member majority, and I recommend very highly anyone interested in this case, it's the infamous Kelo decision, which I believe will live in judicial infamy, just like the Obamacare decision last week. The Kelo decision basically gave unlimited authority to local units to be able to condemn property for almost any reason, as long as it was labeled economic development. We had a case up in northeastern Kansas where a fellow who owned a used car lot, lost his property because the city condemned it so that they could turn it over to a neighboring BMW dealership because they wanted to increase tax assessed valuation. That should not have
might be one of the very few issues where my opponent and I agree. We don't often agree, as you know, on a variety of different important policy decisions, but on eminent domain, we agree. I don't know that you've ever seen a case. I would encourage any of you to do the research and find a case where the city of Wichita has ever taken property by eminent domain for economic development purposes. I'm thrilled that our state has now addressed that issue in a very dramatic fashion that safeguards property so that citizens can't lose their property by eminent domain. And if they do lose it by eminent domain, if there's someone in far northeast Kansas, as my opponent has shared, or someone in some remote county somewhere in Kansas, the state now has protected them and made certain that if they get their property stolen by the government, by eminent domain, that they're very well compensated. They have to have an evaluation done by independent appraisals, and they have to pay twice the value of what market value is for that property. We haven't ever done it. We will never do it. We've never taken property for economic development reasons by eminent domain. Share one quick story with you. When I was on the May School Board, we were growing schools and needing additional property to expand, and we were wanting to expand a parking lot next to one of our schools, buying up many of the homes so that we could build this parking lot. Well, one house said they didn't want to sell. Actually, they did. Their house was valued at $45,000. They said they wouldn't sell for a penny less than $95,000. I'm not sure that that's a great use of public dollars when we throw that kind of money. I think we ended up offering them something like $65,000, and they turned it down. They said, take us by eminent domain. Drive out to Mays and drive next to Central Elementary School, you'll see a parking lot built around a house. We were not going to take it by eminent domain, and the house still sits there. We're not going to do those kinds of things. I've never done those kinds of things in my 17 years of government. Not going to start now.
The question is, what does he intend to do for me as a Sedgwick County resident and not a member of the city of Wichita or any other small city?
Charlie, you know, I served on the May School Board for 12 years in a variety of different leadership positions where I served the entire school district. They liked the way that I served. They asked me to serve as a government liaison person for that district, and I attended several meetings in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the state of Kansas because they liked the way that I served citizens. As I've served for, as you pointed out, the citizens of Wichita, I also serve on Regional Economic Area Partners group that's made up of 37 different municipalities around the area. Here's what I'm going to do that's going to directly help you. We're going to develop economic development policies that allows our community to compete. We're going to solve some of those west side Sedgwick County flooding issues. We're going to build infrastructure so that we have a safer community. Clear differences in this race is supporting those needed infrastructures. One example is I voted to support the changes needed to improve Kellogg and 235 interchange. Dangerous interchange, absolutely needs fixed. It affects everybody in that part of the county, not just the citizens of Wichita. I voted for that. My opponent did not vote for that. We need, if you look out in western edge of the city, we have 4 projects under construction right now. Someone complained, why are you doing 4 projects in 1 year? I said, because the short answer is we have 4 more that we need to do next year. So tell me which projects you want to delay. Because of my track record of living within our means, we've been able to put money into public safety. We have a new fire station at 135th and 21st Street during my 5 years. We put more money in public safety. We put more money in streets and roadways and lived within our means. I'll continue to do that when I fight for all of Sedgwick County because I think we need additional services delivered, just like the ambulance services where citizens have to wait 25 minutes. We streamline government. We're going to deliver services. I have a track record of that. I think you'll be happier at the end of the day.
I appreciate the question because it shows a difference between us as candidates, because we've made a number of accomplishments in terms of road projects and work, and I'm going to try and answer your question in this manner. If you want increased spending, and if you want the higher taxes that are going to have to come, because the only way they can do it is bonding, and eventually it's like putting a mortgage on your community. You'll have to raise taxes to get it, or pay for it one way or another, directly or indirectly. There is a clear difference, because we are spending a significant amount of money right now on public improvements, and I think we're spending it more effectively. I'll cite one example. 21st to 29th Street on Tyler Road. The city reopened it because they had almost every other north-south arterial street blocked because of construction. And now they're saying, we're going to have to go back in and redo it. Well, I think we need a government that will do it right the first time and not have to come back and do it a second time. Now, on 235 in Kellogg, basically this is the #1 highway project in the city of Wichita, according to the Kansas Department of Transportation. But the city didn't have any money for it. They do have money for what's called a half-access project at 13th and 13th and Zoo Boulevard. And it's going to cost over $50 million for 2 movements, or $26 million a movement. And I've been told that from an engineering point of view, this is very expensive and ineffective. What the county did decide to do was we are going to use basically 1 year of all our funds for highway and spread it out over 3 years and help redo that intersection at 235 and Kellogg that needs to be redone. But if the city of Wichita had some money in it, instead of having to redo Tyler Road between 21st and 29th Street, we'd be much better off. I want to begin by thanking the folks, every one of you, each and every one of you, for coming out, and whether you support me or support Councilman Longwell. I very much appreciate you participating in the political process, and I look forward to seeing you either at the polls August 7th or shortly before. There's a clear choice in this race between the 2 candidates. You have a candidate who says, I want to empower you at the ballot box. It's working in 3 of our 4 neighboring states. No tax hikes without voter approval. Let's do it. Let's do it now. I've pushed it repeatedly at the county level. I will continue to push it as long as I have breath in my body, whether I'm in office or out of office. Now, that is a good starting point, but there is more that needs to be done. The sustainability grants, wasteful federal grants, we need local officials who will speak out and say, this nonsense needs to stop and needs to stop now. And if you want that type of leadership, vote Colonel Peterson on August 7th. Thank you.
Let me help educate my opponent on one item, because he's obviously confused. When you look at Tyler Road between 21st and 29th Street, #1, it was done by a private contractor. And the city's going to hold them accountable because it doesn't meet our standards. The citizens are unhappy, and they should be. And the private contractor is going to go back in and do it right at the private contractor's expense, not the taxpayer's expense. So it's one thing to get up here and grandstand and tell the city to do it right the first time. It's another to make sure that we're holding people accountable. And we do that on a variety of different fronts. There are clear differences, obviously, in this campaign. I have shared with you before that the city of Wichita in the last 5 years has refused to spend more money than they take in. We have balanced our budget without tapping into those reserve funds, and we've done it by streamlining government, by doing some consolidation of internal departments, and we can do the same thing at the county level. We should be doing the same thing at the county level. I'm glad that my opponent finally acknowledged in his second term he's going to work on streamlining government. He should have started working on it in his first term, and maybe we wouldn't have had to spend more money than the county takes in for the last 3 years. So as we get deeper into this race, I hope many of you understand the importance of what we're trying to accomplish here. I would ask for you to support me on August 7th, and I look forward to seeing some of you in a more intimate setting so that I can share some of my views, because obviously we're kind of constrained in a format of this nature, and it's hard to get out all of the things that we want to focus on. But I would appreciate your support and look forward to having that vote on August 7th.